So the perineum is a very important area within the realm of sexual practices and energetic cultivation practices in general. And this is an important area that can function as a bit of a pump for bringing the internal energy, bringing sexual energy upwards in the body. But I feel that there's a bit of a misunderstanding into how to actually activate this region in a way that's beneficial versus detrimental. And I'm gonna break down a little more of the subtleties of the perineum. You're gonna learn some of the secrets of this part of the body and how to activate it in a more subtle but powerful way for your sexual cultivation and general energetic cultivation practice. I'm Jonathan White. I'm here to help you master your sexual energy so you can manifest your ideal life. If you're enjoying the content, hit subscribe to support the channel and make sure you get my free ejaculation control course in the link in the video description below. So the perineum is, of course, the area between the genitals and the anus, and very connected with the pelvic floor, connected with the sexual region, the sexual energy, the sexuality. In the Taoist model, the perineum relates to the Hui Yin point, or more so the Hui Yin point relates to the perineum, because the Hui Yin is a specific area in this part of the body, which functions both as a sort of storage area for Jing, for sexual energy, as well as functioning as a bit of a pump to move Jing, to move sexual energy, vitality through the body. But I feel that there's a misunderstanding about how this is actually done. The most common instruction you're going to see when it comes to sexual practices, whether it's Taoist practices, tantric practices, or modern male sexual health practices, the most common thing you will hear is the instruction to squeeze the pelvic floor. Squeeze it like you're trying to hold back urine. And this implies a Kegel type engagement. And I personally feel that doing this as a gross physical, not gross in the sense of like dirty and wrong, but just as like overtly physical and almost like unnecessary like brute strength of just squeezing, tightening the pelvic floor muscles, I feel that it's a bit of an error in the practice and not what was intended. You have to understand that with these practices, these esoteric internal arts, they've been, first of all, handed down generation after generation for hundreds of thousands of years, and then translated into English. So there's a lot of room for error in that teacher to student to maybe casual person who didn't really understand what was happening. And I think that it would be easy to mistake the true instruction for what you're supposed to be doing to interpret that as, oh, just squeeze it like a tightening. And why I feel that this is an error, and it's not like it's going to kill you. You know, I don't think anyone's died from doing a Kegel. I could be wrong. But when we understand, and I think especially in the modern world, most men already have excessive levels of tension in their pelvic floor. And this contributes to premature ejaculation, to weak erections, and a lack of flow, a lot of stagnance in the region, prostatitis, low libido, all kinds of things that relate to this excessive tension in the pelvic floor. So to start adding Kegels on top of this, to start doing this squeezing, okay, I've got to squeeze my pelvic floor during sex. When I'm aroused, I've got to squeeze the pelvic floor. It actually trains a certain branch of your nervous system, the sympathetic nervous system, to kick in and respond to stimulation in the penis. So what you develop is a response of anytime you're experiencing sexual stimulation, whenever your penis is being stimulated, you squeeze the pelvic floor, squeeze in response to that. And you know that this is the case. If next time you're having sex or you're self-pleasuring, whatever, notice if stimulation of the penis causes you to contract the pelvic floor, and you'll know that you have this. And another point I want to make on this is that it's well understood within Chinese medicine, within the internal arts in general, that tension, excessive physical tension, constricts the flow of life force energy. And this can be directly experienced. Like if you're doing Qigong, you're doing Tai Chi, if you clench up your hands, you clench up your arms, you're not going to feel Qi, not in the same qualities you do as developed in the quality of sung, of extension without tension, bringing the mind into the area. So if I relax my hand, if I just extend my fingers gently, I place my mind within the palm, especially in the hot spots, the energy points in the wrist, I feel Qi. If I tense, I feel this gross physical, I don't have as much Qi sensation. And I found the same thing to be true in the perineal region. When I'm just squeezing, like, yeah, it is possible to kind of force this energy up. It can bring energy up, but it also tends, especially when you're aroused, to make some of that hot Jing, that sexual energy, stuck in that region, in the genitals. And I ended up having a lot of problems with this. When I was earlier on in my sexual kung fu practice, because this is what most people are teaching. Just squeeze the pelvic floor. You know, you're drawing, you're doing power locks, squeeze the living hell out of your pelvic floor. And I was developing severe pain sometimes, especially when I, was 3-4 weeks into retention. I would have sex and then have intense pain in my pelvic floor afterwards. I thought I had prostate issues. Well, it turned out there was nothing wrong with my prostate. I just had all this hypertension in my pelvic floor, and it was creating pelvic pain. And the remedy to this became stop doing Kegels. I learned to balance, release all this tension built up in my pelvic floor. And the other misconception here is that the point of the sexual practices is to be able to squeeze the perineum, and that's how you control ejaculation. And this is like the most crude, base level, complete misunderstanding of the whole point of this stuff. And like on a very mechanical level, yeah, technically, if you're at the point of no return, if you're like about to ejaculate and you squeeze your pelvic floors, if you hold a Kegel as hard as you possibly can, most likely it will hold your semen in. But you still go through the whole spasmic peak orgasm process, at least at like a smaller level. And then what you end up with is hormonal changes, this often the same release of prolactin, your erection gets weaker, a bit of a refractory period. And like it's often lessened if you really quote unquote nail it, and that's what most people are teaching as the non-ejaculatory orgasm. That's not the approach I take. Check out some of my other videos on non-ejaculatory orgasms to understand more of my approach to this. And so it doesn't do you a whole lot of good, because first of all, when you're using that response, like, okay, just squeeze my pelvic floor when I need to control my ejaculation, that again kicks in that sympathetic fight or flight response, and it tends to keep you where you're stuck, right at the edge of ejaculating. So it's like technically, yeah, I can just stop and squeeze and I have control, but in reality, it's like a few movements and stop, squeeze, okay, a few movements, a few movements. So you're right at the edge the whole time, just developing tremendous amounts of tension, just slamming your perineum region with all this buildup, which gets stuck in there, and it leads to stagnant jing in your perineum. You can have prostatitis type symptoms, have difficulty urinating, have an excessive overstimulation of your nervous system, like you have insomnia. These are very common things for men doing semen retention because they don't really know what they're doing. The whole thing is, it's not about developing, quote unquote, a strong pelvic floor so that if you're going to ejaculate, you just squeeze it and that somehow bypasses it. No, the whole thing is you don't reach the point of ejaculation in the first place, because then you don't have to take any drastic action. You can't be enjoying an orgasm when you're squeezing the living hell out of something and worried you're going to go further and lose your semen. It's not enjoyable. Okay, so that's the talk on pelvic floor tension. So let's talk about what am I doing instead? Like you may say, okay, Jonathan, blah, 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 blah. What are these perineum secrets? Subtlety is the key word here. The Hui Yin is an acupoint. It's an energy center. You don't squeeze your palm to activate your Laogong point. Then why would you squeeze your pelvic floor to activate the Hui Yin? Now, this is only going to be more relevant to those of you who have some background in sexual kung fu training or qigong training, some internal neigong experience. This will be much more relevant for you, but even if you're new to this, you will get something from this, and you'll at least understand like the direction that you want to be heading in. So this is an energetic engagement. I believe that that's what was meant by these practices. Even in Tantra practice, it's supposed to be an energetic engagement of an energy center. It's a non-physical part of your energy body, which your mind connects to, which you can very tangibly feel and experience. But if you don't have the qi, and especially if you don't have the Dantian development required to do this, then it's going to be an abstract thing for now. But if you practice this and if you implement what I'm going to talk about, it's going to become a very tangible reality for you. So the Hui Yin does function as this sort of pumping action. It also has a strong connection to the soles of the feet, specifically the kidney 1 bubbling wells point. So when you get the feet gates open, the energy gates in your feet open, and breathing, foot breathing is a great practice for this. I have made a video on that. This starts to actually help activate this Hui Yin point as well, which you experience as this bubbling warmth, tingling vibration, both in the soles of your feet, and then you'll feel it bubble up in your perineum as well. And when you're engaging that Hui Yin pump, you'll start to feel something kind of trickling up your spine, like effervescent bubbles or like a thick liquid moving up your spine. So here's the how. If you're doing testicle breathing, you're doing any sort of circulation, microcosmic orbit, drawing energy up the back, drawing out of the perineum, this is the engagement I recommend doing. And yes, that can be during sex as well. So you absorb your mind into that region of your body, you feel it, like your mind just soaks into it, like water absorbing into a piece of paper. You absorb your mind into that region, and as you inhale, a subtle inhale, not a inhale, okay? As you inhale, use your mind to imagine that you were contracting your pelvic floor. Imagine it was kind of like a plucking feeling. Exhale, relax, inhale. Imagine something is squeezing there. It's like a feeling of engagement in your mind in the perineum. And now we'll add, it's more of a gesture. One of my teachers calls these nearly empty gestures. It's physical, only like 1%. So now imagine you're doing like 1% of a Kegel. And most people are already gonna do 5, 10, 20%. But if you can, just the slightest. And actually, just doing it mentally, the imagining often causes it to happen at this 1%. So that's enough for most people. But just as you feel like you're squeezing with your mind, do like a 1% of a Kegel engagement. Just the slightest, like as if I was going to squeeze, or I want to squeeze, but I'm not going to. It's that type of feeling. So do that as you inhale. Exhale, relax. Inhale, and it's like a pluck. It's like a little feeling. Do a few of those repetitions of this and just see what you start to feel. And you can move your awareness as you do this from the perineum to the tip of the tailbone and up the spine. The Wei Lu point starts to, when it opens up and activates, starts to really pump the energy up the spine. So I'd feel it's like a tingly, vibratory warmth in my pelvic floor, almost like a bubbling. Start to feel it move up the spine, up into the head. So it's circulating the energy up, and I didn't have to do any squeezing. It's a very, very subtle engagement. So play with that. Work with it with the testicle breathing practice. I have a video on that. You can practice that during sex, during sexual cultivation, when you're drawing your sexual energy. Now, if you still have these hypertension patterns in your pelvic floor, you may want to just keep it as a completely mental engagement during sex, during self-pleasure, because for some men, even just a little bit of that activation will bring the clenching, because it's just a unconscious stress-based response in the body that's really strongly lodged in there. So that's it. That's what I believe is meant to be the engagement of the perineum. Now, again, this is very subtle. And another thing I'll mention here, kind of wrapping this up, is that the more you develop the lower Dantian, the more powerful that this will become. You may feel absolutely nothing and get nothing from this the first time you do this. If it's early on in your chi development, your cultivation process. It takes years. It takes years to get this stuff. It really does. And it's okay. It's an enjoyable journey. But the more you build the lower Dantian, because the huin, there's these different Ming lines, these different areas of magnetic resonance, these hot spots that connect to the Dantian. There's the Qi Hai in the front, the Ming Men, the acupuncture Ming Men in the back, different from the alchemical Ming Men. And then there's the Hui Yin at the bottom, and they have this connection with the Dantian. When you develop your Dantian, it almost becomes like, for lack of a better explanation, like a second set of lungs. But that's still not the best analogy. It's more of an engine, like the driver of your chi. So it starts to build chi and drive it. The Dantian becomes your access point into the energy body, because you can start to activate these points from the Dantian. So for example, just take this to more of an advanced level. If you put your mind in your Dantian and you feel like you're extending your consciousness from that point, from the Dantian to the Hui Yin, and feeling like there's this slight drawing as you do that. Like it's coming from the Dantian, almost like the Dantian itself is pulling in the Hui Yin. This is all energetic, maybe like a very, very slightest physical aspect to it. That's gonna really pull chi up. And so check out my Dantian breathing video. That will help you, get your Dantian developing. These are the secrets of the internal arts. And again, I think it's just grossly misunderstood, because some people just, not everyone who carries the lineage of a process actually went deep into those practices and really understood them. They may have, got the instruction I just gave you and took it as, just squeeze the perineum, just squeeze it. Yeah, okay, that's what you do, guys. Squeeze the perineum. Yeah, that's what my master said. I'm a Chuanzhen lineage holder. I know what I'm doing. But you don't know. You don't know. You know what I mean? And so this has been my process. It's just like trying to really penetrate the mysteries of the stuff. And I could be wrong. I'm just doing what I have found to be effective based on my own understanding of my process of Qigong, Neigong, sexual cultivation, Tantra for, over a decade of practicing, studying this stuff on basically a full-time basis. And the biggest shift in my practice came when I let go of the overt physical squeezing and doing Kegels and things like that, and allowed it to be a physically relaxed internal process of moving energy instead of just squeezing things physically. And that also gave me immense levels of sexual control, because as you may or may not know by now, the more tension you have and engage in your pelvic floor, the more difficult ejaculation control becomes. The more relaxed your pelvic floor is, the more your energy can freely circulate through your body, the more pleasure you can experience without ejaculating. And if you're interested in learning the path, the process of developing the whole system of sexual kung fu, learning to circulate your sexual energy, learning to have non-ejaculatory orgasms, control ejaculation, open up the channels of the body, check out my Multi-Orgasmic Man course. I'll put a link to that in the description of this video. But let me know what you experience from working with the Hui Yin, the perineum, in this way. Let me know in the comments below, because I'm curious, what other people's process is like. Enjoy the content, hit like to support the channel. Have a great day, my friend.